The promise of reclaiming mental clarity does not require a complete overhaul of one's lifestyle or hours of rigorous training. Many individuals navigate their later years under the heavy assumption that memory lapses and cognitive fog are inevitable consequences of aging that cannot be mitigated. This fatalistic view ignores the profound plasticity of the brain and its ability to reset through brief, intentional shifts in attention. By integrating a specific 60-second practice grounded in the principles of mindfulness, a person can interrupt the cycle of chronic stress that often clouds recall and focus. This approach offers a practical gateway to stabilizing the mind, reducing the noise of distraction, and fostering a sense of daily vitality that supports healthy longevity without demanding impossible discipline. The neurological shift from doing to being the human brain operates in distinct modes that dictate how information is processed and how stress is managed throughout the day. Modern neuroscience aligns with the observations of John Kabat-Zinn regarding the constant pressure to be in a state of doing, where the mind endlessly jumps from one task to the next without rest. This relentless activity triggers the sympathetic nervous system, flooding the body with cortisol and keeping the mind in a state of high alert that is detrimental to memory retention. When an individual operates solely in this mode, the hippocampus, which is crucial for forming new memories, becomes overwhelmed by stress hormones and functions less efficiently. The 60-second practice serves as a deliberate neurological break that shifts the brain from this automatic pilot into a mode of being. This transition allows the nervous system to downregulate, reducing the background noise of anxiety that often mimics memory loss. Mechanism requires understanding that the pause is not merely a cessation of movement, but an active engagement of the parasympathetic nervous system. During this brief minute, the individual directs attention inward to the sensation of the body or the breath, effectively cutting off the supply of stress signals to the brain. This momentary stillness permits the prefrontal cortex to regain command over impulsive reactions and scattered thoughts. It is in this space of non-doing that the brain clears the temporary cache of distractions, much like rebooting a computer to free up processing power. The biological impact of this shift is immediate, lowering heart rate and blood pressure while signaling safety to the primitive parts of the brain. A mind that feels safe is a mind that can remember, process, and retrieve information with greater accuracy. A common scenario illustrates the necessity of this shift in the midst of a chaotic afternoon. A person might find themselves standing in the kitchen, holding a set of keys, yet completely unable to recall why they entered the room or what they intended to do next. The instinctual reaction is often frustration or a spiraling fear that this forgetfulness signals a deeper decline. Instead of succumbing to self-criticism, the individual applies the 60-second pause, standing still and feeling the weight of the keys in their hand. By anchoring attention to the immediate physical sensation and taking a few conscious breaths, the mental fog begins to lift. The frantic energy of the doing mode subsides, and the original intention often floats back to the surface naturally. This brief intervention transforms a moment of panic into an opportunity for reconnection with the present. However, the simplicity of stopping should not be mistaken for ease, as the momentum of daily habits is powerful. The mind resists stillness, often interpreting the cessation of activity as a waste of time or a sign of unproductivity. There is a physiological discomfort that arises when one attempts to halt the mental chatter, manifesting as an urge to check a device or move on to the next chore. It is important to recognize that this resistance is a natural byproduct of a nervous system conditioned for constant stimulation. The practice does not demand that the mind becomes perfectly silent, but rather that the individual acknowledges the noise without being swept away by it. This distinction is vital for maintaining the practice over the long term without discouragement. Kabat-Zinn emphasizes that this act of falling awake to the present moment is a radical act of self-care that reclaims energy usually lost to mindless wandering. By repeatedly inviting the mind back to the now, the neural pathways associated with focus and emotional regulation are strengthened. This process builds a foundation of stability that supports not just memory, but overall emotional resilience. The 60-second reboot is not a magic pill that erases all difficulties, but a tool for navigating them with greater grace. It reestablishes the connection between the mind and the body, ensuring that the individual is fully inhabiting their life rather than just rushing through it. The cumulative effect of these small moments of being creates a buffer against the wear and tear of aging. When the brain is regularly allowed to rest and reset, it preserves its resources for the functions that matter most. The practice teaches the individual that they have agency over their attention and the quality of their experience. This empowerment is a key component of healthy aging, shifting the narrative from passive decline to active engagement. The ability to pause becomes a source of strength, revealing that clarity is often just a breath away. What prevents me from stopping for just 1 minute? Anchoring attention amidst daily distractions, the core of the 60-second practice lies in the cultivation of a stable anchor that can hold attention steady when the currents of daily life become turbulent. John Kabat-Zinn frequently points to the breath as this universal anchor, always available and inherently rhythmic. The breath serves as a bridge between the voluntary and involuntary nervous systems, offering a direct point of access to regulate internal states. When the mind is scattered by the demands of a busy schedule, the simple act of feeling the breath move in and out of the body provides an immediate focal point. This is not about breathing in a special way or forcing deep inhalations, but rather about observing the natural flow of air with gentle curiosity. By tethering the mind to this rhythmic sensation, the individual creates a center of gravity that prevents them from being toppled by external stressors. Mechanism dictates that focused attention on the breath activates the anterior cingulate cortex, a brain region involved in impulse control and emotional regulation. This activation helps to inhibit the default mode network, which is the brain circuit responsible for mind-wandering and self-referential rumination. When the default mode network is hyperactive, it consumes significant cognitive energy and contributes to the feeling of being mentally drained. The 60-second focus on the breath quiets this network, conserving energy and sharpening the mind's ability to attend to the task at hand. This process of anchoring is akin to stabilizing a camera lens. The image of reality becomes sharper, and details that were previously blurred by movement become clear. The physiological feedback loop created by attending to the breath signals to the brain that it is safe to focus on the immediate present. Consider the experience of a person navigating a crowded grocery store, surrounded by sensory overload and the pressure of a mental checklist. The noise, the choices, and the time constraints can easily trigger a stress response that scrambles memory, leading to forgotten items and a sense of overwhelm. In this environment, the individual can employ the anchor of the breath while standing in the checkout line. For 60 seconds, they withdraw their energy from the chaotic surroundings and direct it solely to the sensation of breathing. This internal shift does not change the external environment, but it profoundly alters the person's relationship to it. The anxiety recedes, the mind clears, and the task of purchasing groceries becomes a manageable series of actions rather than a source of distress. One might find that using the breath as an anchor feels awkward or insufficient at first, especially if respiratory issues or anxiety are present. In such cases, the anchor can be shifted to other physical sensations, such as the feeling of the feet touching the ground or the hands resting on the lap. The specific object of attention matters less than the quality of the attention itself. The goal is to find a neutral, physical sensation that exists in the present moment and to rest the mind there. This flexibility ensures that the practice remains accessible regardless of physical condition or immediate circumstance. It is the act of returning to the anchor again and again that builds the mental muscle of concentration. The author's perspective suggests that this practice is about befriending the present moment, whatever it contains. It is an invitation to inhabit the body fully rather than living entirely in the head. This embodiment is crucial for memory, as memories are often encoded with sensory and emotional context. By being more present in the body, the individual enriches the encoding process, making subsequent recall easier. The anchor provides a safe harbor where the mind can rest and regroup before venturing back out into the complexities of life. This periodic grounding prevents the accumulation of mental residue that leads to cognitive fatigue. As the individual becomes more adept at using the anchor, the 60-second practice begins to permeate other areas of life. The ability to center oneself becomes a readily available resource during difficult conversations, complex tasks, or moments of sudden stress. The transition from distraction to presence becomes faster and more fluid. This creates a positive feedback loop where increased clarity leads to greater confidence, which in turn reduces the anxiety that interferes with memory. The anchor becomes a reliable companion, a tool for navigating the uncertainties of aging with a sense of stability and control. What sensation grounds me when I feel overwhelmed? Navigating the currents of the wandering mind, a fundamental misunderstanding of mindfulness and the 60-second practice is the belief that success is defined by a completely empty mind. Individuals often feel they have failed if thoughts intrude during their minute of intended focus, leading to frustration and abandonment of the technique. John Kabat-Zinn clarifies that the nature of the mind is to think, just as the nature of the heart is to beat. The objective is not to suppress thoughts or achieve a vacuum of silence, but to change the relationship with the thinking process. When the mind wanders, as it inevitably will, the practice is to simply notice the drift without judgment and gently shepherd attention back to the anchor. This act of noticing and returning is the true workout for the brain, strengthening the neural circuits of executive function. Mechanism reveals that the moment an individual realizes their mind has wandered is actually a moment of high cognitive awareness. It represents a victory of the prefrontal cortex over the automaticity of the default mode network. Each time the person catches themselves planning dinner or rehashing a past conversation during the 60-second pause, they're engaging in a process of metacognition or thinking about thinking. This strengthens the brain's capacity to monitor its own activities, a skill that is critical for memory management. The practice teaches the brain to distinguish between useful information and mental noise. Over time, this reduces the stickiness of distracting thoughts, allowing them to pass through the mind like clouds across the sky without hijacking attention. A practical application of this unfolds when a person sits down to read a book or review a document and realizes they have read the same paragraph 3 times without absorbing a word. The automatic reaction might be self-condemnation, labeling the lapse as a sign of deteriorating mental faculties. Instead, the individual can use the 60-second reset to acknowledge the wandering mind. They pause, recognize that attention has drifted, and without criticism, bring the focus back to the breath or the sensation of sitting. This non-judgmental return clears the mental slate. The reading can then resume with renewed focus, free from the emotional baggage of frustration that would otherwise impede comprehension. It is important to acknowledge the limitation that this practice is not a cure for organic medical conditions, such as dementia or Alzheimer's disease. While it supports brain health and optimizes function, it cannot reverse structural damage or alter the progression of neurodegenerative illnesses. However, for the vast majority of people experiencing age-related cognitive changes or stress-induced brain fog, the benefits are substantial. The practice addresses the functional impairments caused by anxiety and distraction, which often masquerade as more serious memory deficits. By managing the emotional and attentional components of cognitive performance, the individual can maximize their existing capabilities. The author's insight into non-striving is particularly relevant here. The paradox is that by trying too hard to relax or remember, the individual creates more tension. The 60-second practice encourages a letting go of the need for a specific result. By releasing the struggle to control every thought, the mind naturally settles into a clearer state. This approach reduces the performance anxiety that often exacerbates memory problems. When the pressure to be perfect is removed, the brain functions more efficiently. The practice becomes a refuge rather than another task to be mastered. Ultimately, navigating the wandering mind builds a profound sense of patience and self-compassion. The individual learns to treat themselves with kindness rather than harsh discipline. This emotional shift is vital for senior wellness, as chronic stress and self-criticism are toxic to the brain. By embracing the wandering mind as a part of the human experience, the fear associated with memory lapses diminishes. The practice fosters a gentle persistence, a resilience that allows the person to keep returning to the present moment, no matter how many times they drift away. This resilience is the bedrock of maintaining cognitive vitality in the face of aging's challenges. Where does my mind go when I am not looking? Cultivating cognitive reserve through presence, the long-term implication of integrating the 60-second practice into daily life is the cultivation of cognitive reserve, a buffer that protects the brain against the effects of aging and pathology. While 1 minute may seem insignificant in isolation, the cumulative effect of these repeated resets is a rewiring of the brain's stress response systems. John Kabat-Zinn suggests that by weaving mindfulness into the fabric of ordinary days, individuals transform their biological baseline. The reduction in chronic cortisol exposure preserves the structural integrity of the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. This preservation is not merely about maintaining status quo, but about actively nurturing the brain's ability to adapt and function under changing conditions. A mind that is regularly cleared of stress debris is more flexible, more resilient, and better equipped to encode new memories. Mechanism indicates that neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections, remains active throughout the lifespan. Every time an individual chooses presence over automaticity, they are reinforcing the neural pathways associated with attention and emotional regulation. This creates a denser, more robust network of connections that can compensate for the natural attrition of neurons that occurs with age. The 60-second practice acts as a daily stimulus for this positive plasticity. It encourages the brain to remain alert and engaged, rather than slipping into the atrophy of disuse. This cognitive engagement is as crucial for brain health as physical exercise is for cardiovascular health. In a lived scenario, consider the difference in quality of life between an individual who moves through their day on autopilot and one who punctuates their day with moments of presence. The former may reach the evening feeling exhausted, with a blur of memories about what transpired. The latter, having taken several 60-second pauses, retains a sharper, more vivid recollection of conversations, meals, and tasks. These small pockets of clarity stitch together to form a coherent and rich narrative of daily life. The simple act of paying attention enhances the depth of experience, making life feel fuller and slower in the best possible way. This heightened engagement with the present is the antidote to the sensation that time is slipping away unnoticed. It is essential to recognize that this approach redefines the concept of productivity and success in later life. Society often equates value with speed and output, a metric that disadvantages the aging population. The 60-second practice posits that true vitality comes from the quality of one's presence. By slowing down to connect with the moment, the individual demonstrates a mastery over their own time and attention. This shifts the focus from what has been lost to what is being experienced now. It validates the present moment as the only time where life actually happens, and therefore the only place where memory can be formed. The author's philosophy ultimately points to a way of being that is whole and integrated. The practice is not a technique to be used only when things go wrong, but a way of living that prevents things from going wrong in the first place. It fosters a deep sense of trust in one's own mind and body. This trust is empowering, dispelling the fear of helplessness that often accompanies the aging process. The individual realizes that they possess an internal resource that is always accessible free of charge, and independent of external circumstances. As the journey concludes, the 60-second reboot stands as a testament to the power of small, consistent actions. It offers a path to age with energy, not by fighting against time, but by fully inhabiting the time that is given. The clarity that is sought is not found in the past or the future, but right here, in this breath, in this minute. By reclaiming the present, the individual secures their memory and their vitality. The practice is a simple invitation to come home to oneself again and again, ensuring that the years ahead are lived with awareness, dignity, and peace. Well, I choose to notice right now.